The system now then that we're going to look at in terms of homeostatic regulation is the respiratory system, alright, your respiratory rate. So, we're talking about your respiratory rate. Which system are we talking about then?
Lungs.
Yeah, lungs. Yeah, your respiratory system. So, let's have a quick recap on the structure and the function of the respiratory system. What is the function of the respiratory system? What does it do? When we talk about the function, we're talking about what it does. What does it do? It does. It gets the oxygen for our cells into our body, and it gets rid of the carbon dioxide waste from our cells out of the body. So the function of the respiratory system is gaseous exchange. And the exchange of gases is oxygen and carbon dioxide. And it's absolutely essential because, of course, all of our cells need that for cellular function, for cellular metabolism. All cells need oxygen. Cells cannot function if they have too much carbon dioxide, so that needs to be excreted through the lungs as well. So the function is gaseous exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The structure is what? Tell me bits of the respiratory system. The trachea, right? What's the trachea? Yeah, it's your windpipe. It's got the little U-shaped cartilage rings around it to keep it rigid. The back bit of the cartilage goes up against the esophagus, but it needs to be kept rigid because your windpipe, your trachea, has to be kept open to allow the passage of air. So there's your trachea. What else is there in your respiratory system? Your lungs, right? Okay, so your lungs are these two organs made up of lobes. What else is inside the lungs? What have we got in there? Bronchi. We've got the bronchi. They come out from the trachea into two bronchi, and then they break down in the lungs into smaller little pipes. What are those smaller pipes called? Bronchioles, exactly, bronchioles. And at the end of the lungs, there are millions and millions and millions of little sacs where the gaseous exchange takes place. Can you remember what they're called? Alveoli. Alveoli, exactly, they're like little cauliflowers. And they have, running over them, tiny systems of capillaries. Little systems of capillaries. And the cells of the alveoli are one cell thick. The cells of the blood vessels are one cell thick. The walls of the blood vessels are one cell thick. And that gaseous exchange takes place through those. I'm just going to stop until people stop sort of muttering in the background. Sorry, it's a bit wearing. Liz and Zoe, please. Okay. Right, so that's a very, very basic overview to recap on that, but you have that in a lot more detail in your other work. Okay. It is linked to the autonomic nervous system. So autonomic, what does that mean?
Does it by itself?
Does it by itself. It's automatic, thank you. Yeah. So it's linked to the autonomic nervous system, which means that your breathing takes place without you knowing about it. You don't have to consciously think about it, in, out, whether you're asleep or awake, your autonomic nervous system controls that. Alright. If it's to do with your autonomic nervous system, which bit of your brain is it most closely linked to? Which bit of your brain did we say controls your autonomic nervous system? Medulla, thanks Sophie, your medulla. Okay, so already we're getting an idea of what's involved in this. Autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic, speed up, slow down, controlled by the medulla, at the bottom of your brain, linked to your respiratory system. Now, When we talked about the respiratory system before, what we focused on very much was the actual lung tissue. We talked about the alveoli, we talked about gaseous exchange, we talked about the structure, where it sat within the body, where the heart was, etc., etc. We talked about the diaphragm. The diaphragm, when you inhale, pulls down and pulls air into your lungs. When you exhale, relaxes up to press air out of your lungs again. And we talked about the diaphragm. We didn't particularly talk about another very important part of the respiratory system, which is your rib cage. Your rib cage protects, but it also has running between your ribs many, many, many little tiny muscles which are called intercostal muscles. Intercostal muscles. And those intercostal muscles are basically what moves your rib cage. Because when your diaphragm pulls down, your rib cage actually expands out at the same time to pull your lungs out, so that not only is your diaphragm pulling your lungs down to make them bigger, but your rib cage is pulling them out to expand your lung capacity at that point. And then, do you want to turn that off? And then when you breathe out, your diaphragm goes up, your intercostal muscles compress your lungs again to squeeze the air out. Tony, put it in your pocket, please. Put your phone in your pocket, please. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Right, okay. So your intercostal muscles are a very important part of this system, with you breathing in and out, in and out. Okay. So we will talk about the autonomic nervous system, right? In those intercostal muscles in your chest, there are some stretch receptors. Okay? What is the job of a receptor? Yes, it identifies, it detects change, and then it sends messages back to your brain. So it detects information about the way a person is breathing. The way a person is breathing is called their status of ventilation. i.e., are they breathing fast? Are they breathing slowly? Are they doing shallow breaths? Or are they doing really sort of deep sort of breaths because they really need a lot of oxygen, or they're fighting for oxygen? The stretch receptors detect the information about your status of breathing. And they do that through how much they're stretching. How much are they being strained? And that will send a message back to your medulla. Okay? And that will then tell you either to speed up or slow down your respiration rate. If the information from the stretch receptors goes back to your medulla that you are not getting enough oxygen in, what will it do? What will your medulla tell your body to do at that point?
Breathe faster.
Breathe faster. Which branch of the autonomic nervous system will it use to do that? Sympathetic. So it will speed up your rate of breathing and the amount of sort of expansion of your lungs. Okay? So it is partly the stretch receptors in your muscles and your tissues that tell you that. The other kind of receptors that you have in your body, which we did talk about as well, are your chemical receptors. And what your chemical receptors do is they detect change in the chemistry inside your cells. So if we're talking about breathing, what are those chemical receptors going to pick up information about in your cells? What is it to do with respiration in your cells that will be picking up information about? Oxygen and too much carbon dioxide. Yeah. So the chemical receptors in your cells and in your tissues will say, need more oxygen. Not enough oxygen for metabolism. And that message then will go back to your medulla. Or it might say, there is not enough, there is too much carbon dioxide, sorry. You need to get rid of it, in which case your breathing rate will increase, okay? And they are in your medulla, those receptors as well, that tell you about your oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, but they're also in your aorta, heart, and carotid, that says how much oxygen and carbon dioxide are in them as well. So it's a mixture of physical receptors in your muscles, nerve receptors, and also chemical receptors that will affect your respiratory rate. So, just as an activity, in pairs, imagine that you've run at the drive. I'll stop that for a second.